In the ecoregion of southern Peru, an ancient civilization without written language told stories and worshipped giant deities who dwelled in the mountains and flew. Most of the deities are without name. We only have images of them, images created on their beautiful pottery and woven into their fine textiles, images that repeat over and over.
A giant serpentine being, a killer whale, a spotted cat, Kon, the powerful creator god, Bato, the feared god of destruction, and a wide range of anthropomorphic, half-human, half-animal beings representing the hummingbird, monkey, serpent, and more. The mythical being was their most worshipped. This feigned, human-like god often featured feline whiskers, wearing a diadem or a forehead ornament, a mouth mask, and often carried trophy heads.
Like the mythical being, the Nazca people practiced a ritualized form of headhunting, creating trophy heads from enemies or community members for spiritual or social purposes. Heads were typically prepared by removing the brain, sealing the lips with cactus spines, and sometimes adding decoration. These heads were not just battle trophies. They were sacred items used in ceremonies, serving as a bridge between the earthly world and the divine. They were used in rituals intended to appease deities associated with fertility, water, and agricultural success.
The deities who lived in the mountains and flew in the sky. Is this why, in addition to telling their stories through art and pottery and textiles, they carved their stories into the earth? The largest etching stands at 1,200 feet tall. The Nazca line spread out along 170 square miles of desert with over 1,000 different geoglyphs depicting animals, straight lines, and geometric designs. No one knows what the lines are for. You cannot see the geoglyphs standing on the ground. You can only see them from the sky. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another tasty road snack. I'm Mary with my co-host Haley, and before we get into the Nazca lines, let me just apologize to you today for not bringing you the Nazca mummies. There's nothing more disappointing, I understand. But when I started writing all I had about the Nazca mummies, I told Haley, you won't like this as a road snack. And so let me tell you, it is in no way a snack.
You're right, Mary. You did text me and told me that. And I think these Nazca lines are going to set up our episode on the Nazca mummies very nicely. So, Mary, the Nazca people, what do you think about them? What did we learn this week?
I learned a lot about them, and mostly I took away that they were artists and very advanced in their day. Just look at their pottery. While most pottery at the time was painted, they would fire it and then they would paint the designs afterwards. They actually painted their pottery before it was fired with beautiful precision. And that is why you can pick Nazca pottery out of any lineup of any old pottery that you see. It is just absolutely amazing. And if you've done pottery and you've worked with slip colors, you know how hard it is to paint that and not to get those freaking lines to bleed together. So it's just amazing. And their designs, that's very unique. And it's a fun thing, a stylized way to their art. And that translated into their textiles, which again was ahead of its time. It was made from a blend of cotton and llama. Llamas are still very prevalent there in the area. So it was soft and durable, but it was also very vibrant and beautiful. And what we're here to talk about today, that same style that we see in the pottery and in their textiles, it translates into the Nazca line. So we know for a fact that they are related to the Nazca people.
Well, now, Mary, I kind of want to do a pottery class, something that's kind of been on the bucket list. I think maybe you just talked me into it.
It was super fun.
But we are kind of sidestepping The whole they were feared headhunters and practiced human sacrifice to their deities.
Yeah, I'm just kind of focusing on they were artists and musicians. I mean, those heads that they carried around with them, they were kind of little works of art if you want to get a little funky there. But they would fashion these handles to the tops of the heads that they were drying, and stitching together so that they could carry around with them. They were like little handles on their heads. So they weren't just like picking them up by their hair and dragging them around. They crafted these heads and they were something that they loved.
So art. I mean, that's a very specific art. It kind of reminds me of the shrunken heads
Yeah.
that you would find in maybe New Orleans. But since we're talking about the Nazca lines, let's dig into the lines, right? Maybe a little dad joke there. But we know the Nazca people made the lines. We just don't know why. And maybe before we get too far, let's talk about how these lines were made. It was simple, but it would take hundreds of man hours to create. And the lines are made by removing the top layer of the stones. The top layer is this reddish stone, kind of like a pebble layer. And once that's removed, it revealed the yellow gray clay that is below. And it creates these furrows, as they like to call them. And because there's very little rainfall in that part of the world, that's why these lines are still in very good condition. The lines are about 4 to 12 inches deep. And like we said in our opening, some of them are as tall as 1,200 feet. The Empire State Building is 1,454 feet, so nearly as tall as the Empire State Building.
Yeah, they're very impressive. And, I'd also like to add that the lines go over surfaces. So if there was a hill or even a mountain, the line still followed that straight path to keep the image intact. So that is amazing. So if they were in a flat area and then that area went up into a hill, they carried the design up the hill, removing the stones. So the clay that was below, once they exposed that, it has a high lime content, so this lime would harden when exposed to the morning mist, and this also helped keep those fragile lines well preserved. And I know you mentioned that they're like 4 to 12 inches deep, and they're also about 13 inches wide.
So it's kind of like how if you get a stick and draw in the sand, everyone goes to the beach and they write their name and the year in the sand. So it's very similar to getting that stick, drawing in the sand. You just remove the top layer of sand and then you get your design. Except this is on a giant scale and the people were the sticks. No one really knows how the lines were accomplished. They theorize that it was a community project, and over time, the Nazca etched all of these designs into the region. But let's stop and think about that. There are swirls and hummingbirds and ants and such, right? It's all very stylized in that Nazca style. But still, Mary, as you mentioned, it's art, it's beautiful, but you can only see these giant etchings from the sky. So, how did they manage that? Just the precision of those lines and it coming into a piece of art, visual from the sky.
In my research, one theory that I came across, and really it was the only theory that I came across, was that they used stakes so that they would stake out their design in advance and then they'd all come along and they would rake away the stones. Being artistic people, maybe they just had that intuition. Maybe they just knew how to do this. They had this ability to make these designs on large scales. If we look at Mount Rushmore, that's a giant scale piece of art, and they have professionals come in and do that. So I think if you're an artistic people, it's possible. But even if you aren't artistic, I mean, the planning behind it is just massive and sophisticated, even though the designs themselves are a little bit simple. But because of the scale and the fact that they are so precise everywhere, it's just fascinating. And science, and people just have not come up with a good way on how they did these.
It's just another small piece of we don't know. We don't know about these lines. And we can't really speculate as to how they managed because we don't know. The other crazy thing is when you're standing in the desert, you can see the lines, but they just look like lines. You can't really make out the design. And the world didn't realize that they were designs until the 1930s, when the commercial airplanes were a little more common.
Yeah, and isn't that a wild thing? You can't see them from the ground or even a higher elevation. If you go up a little bit, you can only see them fully from the sky. So, this is why theory suggests that they were made as a kind of offering to their sky people because their deities flew. So, maybe they were made for ceremonies or tributes, or maybe they followed some water routes or they followed something to sacred sites. But I tend to believe that they were made for their sky deities.
Yeah, we're going to post all kinds of photos on our social media of these geoglyphs, but let's talk about one specifically, and that is the El Astronato or the spaceman. And Mary, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but they have some old seasons of Ancient Aliens on Netflix now. So I think that's great. If no one has ever watched Ancient Aliens, it's a great opportunity because there is an episode that talks about this one. And the spaceman, unlike most of the other images, this is a humanoid figure. And it appears to be waving. It has these large eyes and a helmet like head, thus the spaceman moniker. So the spaceman is on a hillside, so visible to the people on the ground. It's about 104 feet tall. So he definitely stands out because one, you can see him right on the hillside. And two, it is the only human type design of the Nazca lines. And then three, space, right? Because ancient aliens again. Have you seen that episode?
I have seen the episode. I love me some Georgios. Every time I see him, I go, "Oh, Georgios." I don't know why, but I always do. It was a good episode, and they do have that slant where everything is aliens, and I think sometimes not everything is aliens, but maybe here. And I could see where they would think that that was a spaceman. It is interesting because to me, it doesn't have that same refinement as the other lines, or then again, maybe it does. There are no fingers that you can see on the astronaut, and the feet are kind of clunky. You know what I'm saying? They look like they could be boots. So they could have been trying to draw a space suit where the distinction would have been hard to see. And I say that because the Nazca people, they did draw fingers. They did proportions very well. So some say it is a human waving or a shaman. And I don't think I see that because their shamans wore headdresses. Their shamans had the diadems on their foreheads, and they translated that into their artwork, into their pottery, and into their textiles. So they would have translated that into those Nazca lines. So this astronaut is something different that they were trying to translate into a giant geoglyph.
Yeah, I can see what you mean about it not having as fine a detail as some of the other designs. And that makes you think that maybe this was done intentionally. So maybe it is a visitor. I do agree with you that on Ancient Aliens, it does go towards more of the alien side, but it could be a little bit more of supernatural. And that's kind of the theme of all of our episodes and our podcasts. So maybe it was a visitor. The Nazca lines, another speculation is that the lines were navigation guides for the sky people. There are many, many straight lines in the Nazca lines that they say could have been used as runways. And we are going off the lines for a moment. I'm full of dad jokes today. But if we kind of shift, if we look at Mount Palpa in the Nazca Valley, there is this giant Palpa mountain where the entire top of the mountain is gone. And it's like flat. It's like a flat landing site.
Yeah, that mountain is crazy to me. And the interesting thing is there's no rubble. So if the Nazca people sheared the top off to make it smooth, where did that rubble go from carving the mountain? Where is it? There is no evidence of any of that anywhere. And like we know in nature, mountains don't grow and then just are sheared off at the top. That's not natural. Something happened to make that a flat site.
So, are we thinking their deities actually did fly? If we look at just surface evidence, the giant geoglyphs only able to be viewed from the sky, the flat mountain, and their own voices through artistic interpretations of flying deities, who are we to say? How can we say that they were dumb? These people, just like in all cultures and things that we've spoken on in other episodes, these people knew things. Their agricultural engineering and the ability to get water from the desert to thrive and grow their crops, it was impressive, and it's still impressive to this day. It's very easy to get frustrated at how modern science just calls ancient civilizations simple minded. And clearly they weren't. So why pick apart the things we think are crazy?
I agree. And I think maybe there were some alien visitors or Nephilim deities hanging out there in the Nazca. I mean, they were a bloodthirsty race. And if we're being honest, there is evidence that humans are still just as bloodthirsty today. They've just gotten better at hiding it. But let me say this, I think personally, flight was capable back then. I don't know what they had, but I do think there has been some lost technology along the way or hidden technology. If we look at the ancient civilizations, we have flying carpets, flying chariots, winged beings all throughout their tales and their civilizations. We have UFO type craft in old artwork. And we even have the airships in the 1800s. And don't get me started on those and why those were cut out of our modern tech. So, yes, I think whatever they worshiped, they absolutely did fly. It's the only logical conclusion in my mind.
Nazca is an area full of high strangeness, and locals still claim to see star like UFOs in the sky, as well as a pyramid type craft and actual alien entities. So, are there aliens hanging out in Nazca, at least in ancient times? Or were there just some advanced race that had some lost tech? If we lean towards alien, and we are hanging around in that area, we could make a case for that.
I think we could, or at least make one for our listeners to think that there is definitely something strange there. And there is. The Nazca people came after the Paracas people, but they are influenced by the Paracas. And a big thing the Paracas are known for are their elongated skulls. So they practice ritual head binding. Now, we see that head binding all over ancient civilizations. We see it in Egypt with the Maya and in Africa. But if you take a skull and misshape it, it doesn't change the volume of it. Like if you had a balloon and you twist that balloon and make an animal balloon, it still holds that same amount of air. So if you take a human skull and bind it to a new shape, it will still hold that same space. You can't decrease or increase the volume of the skull. But while most of the elongated Paracas skulls are identified as human, there are a significant number that are missing some of the sagittal sutures. With the head binding, the sagittal sutures will not look normal, but they'll still be there. But some of the sagittal sutures are missing. But not only that, but they have a 30% bigger skull cavity. So that's not human, or at least not a human like anything we know today. So the Nazca still practiced head binding. And my point is that if all the head binding came from emulation, maybe they were trying to look more like the deities they worshipped or these visitors from the sky people.
I've often thought that because you are right. We do see elongated heads in many human deities, right? Or kings and shamans.
The main being that the Nazca worshipped was called the mythical being. And if we look at the description of him, he has a diadem on his forehead. He also wears this mouth mask. So maybe like a respirator or something. And he also carried trophy heads. So the Nazca people, they were headhunters and they also worshipped these deities called harvesters. So I don't know, but I find that bone chilling when we think about the possibility of that alien connection with the mythical being wearing a mouth mask, and they're collecting heads from people and they call some of the deities harvesters. I don't know, but to me, that's just kind of a terrifying name.
I agree. Absolutely terrifying. Well, everyone, we hope you liked this little road snack episode. And if you did, please share it with a friend or a coworker or, I don't know, the groovy dude or chick that you're kind of into in the lunch hour. We don't care who you share it with. Go ahead and send them the website link. And if you haven't yet, later when you're done driving or whatever it is you're doing while you listen to this podcast and maybe thinking about the Nazca lines and the harvester deities, would you please hit that 5-star review button or leave us a kindly worded review? We appreciate that so much.
We really do. And join us next week as we continue our dive into the Nazca people and the controversial discoveries of the Nazca mummies. These are 3-fingered and 3-toed elongated skull humanoids that were recently found in this decade. Take care, friends.
And remember, keep it weird and pull it back to Jesus.
Bye.
Bye.